The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Stephen Sakach here again with my co-host Tullio, Siragusa, and our special guest who we'll introduce in a moment. So in business, attention is often easier to gain than trust. According to Edelman's Trust Barometer, 81% of consumers say they need trust in a brand before they'll consider buying from it. So that trust is often built through connection and consistent, meaningful communication over time. And today, we're exploring what it takes to build community and connection in business and how storytelling, strategy, and leadership all play a role in creating lasting relationships. Tullio, introduce our special guest today.
My pleasure. Our guest today is Leslie Youngblood. She's the founder and CEO of Youngblood MMC. And Leslie brings more than 20 years of experience in marketing and advertising, helping hospitality brands, service-based businesses, and nonprofits, as well as membership organization, go from overlooked to unforgettable through strategic storytelling and execution. She's also the co-founder of Table Tag, a platform designed to simplify communication between marketers and clients, and host of the Serious Lady Business Podcast, where she shares real stories and lessons from female founders. Known for her ability to blend creativity and results, Leslie helps organizations build strong brands and meaningful connection with their audiences. Leslie, it's great to have another marketer with us on the show, on the Bliss Business Podcast. Looking forward to chatting today.
Thank you both for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. I love talking marketing with fellow marketers, so can't wait for this conversation.
The table's turned today. The table's
turned. Yes, indeed.
So, Leslie, so you've built your career around storytelling and brand strategy. From your perspective, what role does storytelling play in building a real community and not just visibility?
I think it really is everything. It's at the core of who and what a brand is and what makes it unique and special and how you connect with your audience. We hear storytelling, and I think it's used so much as a buzzword, but storytelling is not a marketing tactic. It's how people decide if they want to engage with you and your brand. And today, with the evolution of AI and the ease of storytelling, or almost false storytelling, to be able to share your story of what makes you, your brand, unique and special is more important than ever.
Now, many brands are very active online, but they struggle. They struggle to create meaningful engagement. I mean, it's crazy what's going on out there. They're shouting at customers, using curse word to get people's attention, desperate, trying to create meaningful engagement. What do you think is missing in those cases?
Well, that's a great question. I think, you can see so plainly that so many brands try to be clever, or they try to push the envelope. And I think our audience and our customers are so smart. And when you underestimate your audience, your customer, you're going to fall flat, because they are smarter than we could ever give them credit for. And they can feel that. And so when it's off the mark, it's because I feel like you're missing the truth. You're missing that honesty. And again, people can tell. I think relatable and consistent content beats something that tries to go viral. And so many brands and content creators and influencers are striving for that virality, but really you don't have to hit that proverbial lightning in a bottle. What really makes the impact is consistency over time with content that is truly exemplifying who you are and who you are for. And so, it reminds me of when I helped build Accelerate America, which was a community for entrepreneurs and small business owners. In 2017, we were created with a focus on community and what we saw was this gap in the market of organizations for entrepreneurs and business owners, but that we're talking to them. And I think what made Accelerate America a success, we grew from 0 to over 40,000 members in under 5 years, is that we really gave the platform and allowed the entrepreneurs and small business owners to tell their stories and to connect with each other. And so there's real magic in community and authentic connection today more than ever.
Yeah, I think, today more than ever, like you mentioned, like we're the most marketed to probably generation ever. It feels like it's just throttling up even more and more. And I, being in that industry, we're always just thinking about not contributing to problems that can cause, and how we can, contribute to putting a little good in there. And I think when you really focus on trying to build that connection with an audience and make it meaningful and authentic, that feels like you're putting a little bit of good in there, because that's kind of what people want. We can sense when something's just off in a matter of a couple seconds, right? So thinking about that, so what makes a story really resonate with an audience?
That's a really great question. Like you said, anybody can say anything about anything today. And so with all the different channels coming at us all the time, it can feel like we're being yelled at. And so what's going to make people pay attention is that emotional connection, that human experience that everybody has gone through or that can feel. It's not going for a cheap laugh. It's not going to, I think a lot of businesses too try to scale, or, they're in a proverbial, race to the top. And when you are moving too fast, you don't go as deep as you should. And so to really go deeper instead of broader, I think is something that's inherently important. I think it was Kevin Kelly, who is the founding editor of Wired magazine, who said in a really famous 2008 essay that you don't need millions. And this was in relation to influencers and content creators. It was like, you don't need millions of followers to succeed. You need 1,000 avid fans of your business, because if those 1,000 fans and those 1,000 customers spend maybe $100 a year, you have a 6-figure business with those 1,000 followers, with those 1,000 consumers. And so I think that, how do you connect with 1,000 people? You don't have to, you're trying, I think a lot of businesses and organizations are like thousands and we don't have followers and we need to do this and we got to get to this revenue. And it's like, you have to really, I think, start and look inside and at the interior of your business and really find that emotional truth. Why did you start this business? Why should somebody care about you when they're being yelled at constantly, when there's businesses just like yours all over the world also yelling at them? And so really finding like, what is that thing that really inspired you to start, that what gets you so excited about this product, this service, and lean into that, because that's truly what's going to resonate with an audience.
I think a lot of it has to do with publishers over the years. As the online publishing industry grew, they had to find a way to justify the advertising, right? So they created metrics and eyeballs and views, and everybody bought into it and said, yeah, this is important metrics. And to a certain degree it tells something, but it doesn't really tell whether it's landing or whether it's generating the kind of connection that is required to consider a successful campaign. So how do brands actually know if their message is truly connecting? That's the big question all the time, right? So the CMO is like, here's all the metrics. Well, all these metrics should translate that we're connecting, but it doesn't always translate that way. So what should they be looking for?
That's a great question. So many metrics, so much content, so many channels. I would have to start like, what's the metric or metrics that matter, right? Like, what truly are you looking for? What is that goal that you have for that campaign or that content, that strategy that you are executing? And, for some, not every campaign is going to have the same metrics that matter. You have to decide at the outset, what is, it might not be impressions, it might be comments, right? And I think a lot of times today where, we hear that you could have, 1,000, 1,000,000 impressions and 2 comments. And for me as a marketer, I'm like, oh, well, they just bought those impressions. And that's like a thing too. It's like when you are looking to be your authentic. And there's so many ways for brands to fudge a lot of that these days. So you have to really, start at that core and really determine what's the metrics that matter. Are we looking to grow our brand awareness and get those impressions? Are we really looking to create diehard, fans and really connect with some individuals? And so we're really looking to get them to talk to us and to learn from us. Or are we looking for them to, repost or stitch this or, take this survey? Like, what is the purpose of that content? What is the purpose of that campaign? And that will allow you, I think, to create something that is truly like connection worthy. And that will also allow you to get those results for those metrics that matter.
Yeah, and I'd add to that too, like you mentioned, if you had those 1,000 really engaged customers, look at the lifetime value. We're always trying to get to this if we can, is trying to figure out a lifetime value of customers. Look at the ones who are the really high lifetime value. This is where you've likely got that deep kind of emotional connection, right? Is with that group. What did you do that resonated with that particular group of people? And we know if you can build that emotional connection, on average, you're going to have like 306% increase in lifetime value over satisfied customers. So it's that core group. Like if you can get to it, you've done something that they liked in particular. And so work from that way and figure out, okay, what resonated particularly with that group of people.
Mm-hmm. And even, to piggyback off of that too, Stephen, you're in business. You certainly have people who have bought from you, whether you're B2B or whether you're B2C. There is so much value that is not unlocked in probably the customers and the connections that you have already as well. I think that's something that so many brands and businesses don't even realize, that there's searching for that customer acquisition and trying to build an email list and build the following. But it's like, look at who you have already. How can you unlock more value and more connection and more of that out of the community that you've already built? It's like immensely valuable. It's huge. And so many people miss that.
Do you find, because we were kind of hitting on it a little bit in your conversation a few minutes ago, do you find that you really do need these days to dig in deeper with companies about who they really are? And even because I know as a marketer, like the last thing I want is to be telling a great story, but the consumption experience, the experience with the brand ends up just totally falling flat because that's not who they are. We can tell a great story, but if there's a disconnection there, because somewhere down the line, when someone interacts with that company, it's like, well, this isn't what I was expecting. They told me about this one thing, and now I'm feeling this other emotion. Do you find you've kind of got to navigate those waters a little bit?
1,000%. With a lot of the businesses that we work with these second stage businesses that have started and have seen great growth and are, have great revenue, like, in the millions of dollars. But when you ask them, like, what makes them special or what's your purpose, they kind of like, they struggle for that, right? Because it only takes you so far. And then you really need to nail in that story to grow your business. But I also want to come back to, you mentioned the disconnect, Stephen, and something that still makes me laugh. I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny, but it's like a prime example of a disconnect with the brand. And I'm sure you two will be like, yep, is the McDonald's CEO hamburger taste test recently, right? I mean, talk about a fumble. And it's like, they think, okay, this is a great idea and we're different. We've got great burgers and we're going to show it. And it's like, fell totally flat, and it created this disconnect. And so now people, maybe when they go to McDonald's, now they're thinking like, oh, did you see that guy? And so it's like, man, you got to be real careful. But also, they never should have put that out. I don't know who, right? I know we could talk, for the next hour about that, but like, making a brand personable, you have to do it in the right way, because it can be so easy to do it wrong, even when you're a big, successful brand like McDonald's. So truly,
recap that McDonald's story for anyone who hasn't heard it.
Okay. So, essentially, the CEO of McDonald's was videotaped trying one of their burgers and talking about how delicious their burgers are, and barely took a bite, and his facial expression was like he'd never, I don't want to say disgust, but it just wasn't hitting him like in the right way that
Did
you
not speak
like
to his soul at all.
Yeah, like is that how
It was
anybody
like, this is the product you're selling?
Yeah, like is it have
that.
poison in it? Or was it sour? I don't know. Like if there's a delicious burger, we all know. Again, we all know when there's a delicious burger in front of us, how we're gonna smash that burger. And that he certainly did not do that. And it just again did not land. And I think that is such a testament to let's show how unique we are, but also your audience is smart and they are going to recognize that is not, again, there's like a friction point in the circle of customer experience. And I think that, whether you are, McDonald's or a restaurant or a service, you have to ensure that all the content and the communication that you're putting out connects the dots for the consumer, because any tiny friction point, again, they're smart and they're going to pick up on it.
I got to tell you, about 10, 15 years ago, I fell in love with design thinking because it really opened my eyes to, I was one of those people, like I was in an industry, an expert in the industry. So my perception of what the market needed in an industry came from the person producing the Kool-Aid, right? And I think that's the biggest mistake, where you're always thinking that the producer of the Kool-Aid knows what the Kool-Aid drinkers need.
Yeah.
They're not the same. So,
right.
And so I learned to be curious. It doesn't matter what I think I know. What matters is how it lands and what people want based on what's important to them. And sometimes there's a disconnect because you're making the Kool-Aid, not the one drinking it. Maybe you're drinking it, but you're looking at it differently. So what's the most common mistake brands make, in your opinion, in terms of when something just doesn't connect with their audience?
I think it's because they don't know who they're talking to. They don't know who they're talking to. They don't have the clarity in mind. And like you said, Tullio, you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. And anytime we work with a new client, we of course take the time to get to know the team and the leadership, but we also take time to talk to clients. I think so many brands and businesses, when you're small, every single customer matters. As you grow and scale, it kind of, becomes bigger and you might not be as close to your customer. And I think that's a huge mistake. And I think that is what creates the disconnects, is that they don't know who they're talking to. And when you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. And it maybe sounds simple, but I really do think that is at the core of the problem.
Maybe the McDonald's CEO thought everybody who buys the product is a multimillionaire sitting in an office having a McDonald's burger.
I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know what they were thinking.
Anyway,
Kind of to our
whole hour conversation just to, dissect.
I know we can talk more, but then how hilarious is that? Then you see your competition jump in, because this is a moment that they can capitalize on. And you had all these other brands doing it right and making it, and it's just like, man, as a marketer that's not involved, so it's like, okay, and it's so entertaining and fascinating, but oof, fumble.
Yeah, you went viral for the wrong reason. We're going to piggyback on that and kind of, I guess, drink your milkshake and enjoy it. So thinking about this, in companies, they align their messaging and their brand and their internal communication systems. When you kind of get that internal alignment going, which felt like, McDonald's did not have here. This is how you kind of build those lasting customer relationships. And so community, it can feel organic, but it often depends kind of on these consistent systems and getting everything to align inside and out, like we mentioned. So any kind of, we love talking about systems on here, so that, we can kind of scale stuff for people with a good heart when we can. What kind of systems or practices help ensure that connection and storytelling remain consistent across a brand?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stephen. I totally agree. We are so focused on systems when we work with our clients, because we feel a lot of times brands come in and they just want a solution, but you can't have a solution without the right systems in place. And you certainly cannot have longevity in your success without the right type of systems in place. And so, structure also gives creativity clarity and allows you, to operate consistently and gets everybody on board. We have a phrase we always use internally is you want to market from the offense instead of the defense. And so when everybody is reacting to things and you're not planning things out and nobody knows what to say or how to do anything, it's just chaos. And so you want to be able to have the plan. So when it comes to just being able to create systems, it could be something as easy as calendars, a project management system, check-ins with your team, consistent check-ins. And that's really the thing, is consistency. And you can say, yes, we're all going to use this calendar. And yes, we're going to meet every week or every month or every quarter, but you truly have to follow up with that if you want to get that success. It really is that simple. Like, the consistency is key, whether you're a small business or whether you're a large organization. And that's why large organizations succeed, because they have built all these systems to operate this big machine. And I think that's where a lot of small to medium-sized businesses trip up, is there's nobody to keep them consistent or accountable to these systems that will enable them to hit that next level that they so desire to get to.
Yeah, and part of that accountability is that feedback loop part of a system. Like, it's got to be there. It's got to be, somewhere in that McDonald's thing, a feedback loop failed. At some point, it was like, well, we can't tell him this was.
Yeah, I know.
Right? There was some.
And sometimes it's just egos too. I had a client where they were constantly complaining about their CMO because they didn't want to pursue some of their ideas. And so I dug into it, and I'm like, well, actually, your CMO is trying to save you from yourself. But you have no accountability to a board or anyone else when you're a small business. So you think what you think, and sometimes your ego gets the best of you. It's like your CMO is actually trying to save you from yourself.
Totally. And a lot of times too, it's like almost
Tullio,
idea
I was going to say, that's half the CMO job, I think.
Yeah,
I know,
right.
that is. The problem is when you end up with a business owner whose ego is so big that they don't recognize it. That's a problem. And so the big question is, this is what I guess some of the checks and balances in the bigger company, or at least those who have more enlightened leaders, right? But so you worked with many different organizations. Is that system something that's like a framework that can be applied uniformly everywhere, or does it need to be adapted based on the community and based on the industry and the audience? What's been your experience? Can it be used everywhere else, or you have to kind of adapt and adjust based on industry, audience, and community you're going after?
Yeah, I think at the core, it really is something that can be applied no matter if you are a live music venue, whether you are an environmental services organization, or whether you are a production company. And I use those three for examples because those are three of our clients where we use the very similar systems. We don't use the exact same platforms in order to get it done, but at the end of the day, they all needed structure. They all needed systems in place that allowed them to move forward consistently and proactively in order to drive them forward. And we also use something that we like to call like the from chaos to clarity, a 90-day framework to help marketing campaigns actually get done. And so we really also do encourage our clients and everybody that we work with and talk to think in chunks of 90 days. 90 days feels doable, whether it's a campaign, whether it's an event. The human brain kind of gets overloaded, and especially when you're a business owner or you're a CMO doing all the things, right? Like we know, I'm sure many a times where we've created a campaign and it just lives in a Google Doc, or it lives in a spreadsheet, or we didn't get to it. And why? Because there was something in that process that fell by the wayside. And that's where I always say, like, consistency really is key. But so we definitely, again, whether it's something like a Trello, whether it's something like Google Docs and Google Drive, what is going to be the best component of systems that works for you and your business. It's going to be different depending on industry, but really at the core, the structure is the same. You want project tracking, you want calendars, you want consistent check-ins. And so how do we make that work for your business? How does that work for your business? Looking at the way that you function day in and day out. Maybe it's check-ins once a month because your team is in person, or maybe it's check-ins, a stand-up every week or an every day because you're remote and you need that type of accountability.
Thinking about it in the systems and scaling businesses, I often think this is where culture ends up just taking the biggest hit, is when you're scaling and now you got to add these systems in place, and you end up losing some of that magic that you had when you were smaller. How do you maintain like authenticity as you scale system? Any advice there for people?
Yeah, I really think authenticity starts at the leadership level. It starts at the top and trickles down. And so I would really encourage business leaders and leadership, whether it's C-suite or, executive roles within the organization, to have a consistent cadence of meeting to ensure everybody is aligned, because that definitely trickles down. And I think a lot of times leaders have the vision, but that gets stuck in their heads, or they're all over the place and have lots of ideas, like Tullio just said, and sharing that vision internally. And then it goes outwards and getting it out of your head and make sure everybody understands that. Because again, especially internally, teams want to contribute. They want to feel a part of something. Storytelling is probably why they joined your organization in the first place, because something about your story, your purpose, your mission, your product, your service resonated with them. It got them excited to play a part in driving this forward. And then they're static, and maybe something comes up along the way because they feel like maybe they're not being heard, or that their path forward isn't clear, or how they contribute isn't clear. And so really having, starting at the top and ensuring that the leaders or leader of the organization is sharing that vision and keeping everybody aligned together, I think is paramount.
I want to shift into the role purpose plays in all this, but we have a couple of audience questions first.
Great.
The first one's on LinkedIn. Says, as a co-founder of a tech platform, what's the biggest lesson you've learned about making communication simple? Great question.
That is a great question. My journey as a tech founder, building a tech platform, came out of my desire for simplified communication between a marketer and a client. And, we talk about marketers using all types of channels, but really when we communicate interpersonally, whether it's myself and a client, or yourself and a member of your family, you're getting texts, emails, phone calls, on posts on your wall, and comments and the DMs. And so we really created a tech platform that would make communication simple, and that would simplify all these channels of communication and pull it together. And I think tech really is at an exciting inflection point of simplifying a lot of that, whether you're looking at Claude Cowork, whether you're looking at MCPs that can connect to all the disparate platforms that you have going on and can help everything run seamlessly. I'm really excited at tech's opportunity to simplify communication even further and help us go further together, communicating and connecting.
Okay, one more question. How can we use technology to automate the boring stuff so we have more time for real connection? I will add a caveat to that. Sometimes the boring stuff, the analytics, the data, can tell you a lot about a company and a business and a client. So what you consider boring stuff anyway.
Right. Well, there's people that don't think data is boring and are like love data. And I wouldn't consider myself a natural numbers person, but I love data and I love digging into it. I think maybe that's the Virgo in me that I'm like, data, numbers, organization. But technology to automate the boring stuff, man, I think we're living in a really exciting time, because we have technology that can automate the boring stuff, the email follow-ups that we forget about. I just shared recently, I was at an event for a client last week, and we had 3 sheets of information. It was all handwritten sign-ins from guests with their emails, with their names, with their phone numbers, with who company that they're with. And instead of having myself or a member of our team sit at their computer and type it all in, took 3 pictures, uploaded it to chat, and it made me an Excel spreadsheet with all that information in 30 seconds. I think tech automating the boring stuff is the most brilliant, beautiful part about tech, especially with where tech is headed. I'm not sure how you guys are using it, if you're using it to automate the boring stuff right now, but again, that alleviates those tasks, those boring tasks, so we can focus on creating a campaign, a follow-up, with those guests about what they thought about the event, about pulling great materials for them that were spoken about during the event. They're like, oh, this would be good for them all to have. And so the automation of the boring stuff is really going to bring about increasingly exciting ways for us to facilitate additional connection.
Absolutely.
And I will say, like, that boring stuff, I actually, using text, using AI lately, have found kind of new life in some of that stuff, because it's allowing me to go places I really haven't gone before with some analysis. And to me, that kind of gets, a little bit interesting, because it starts telling you stories about things that you just, maybe you just weren't thinking that way. But when you're throwing it in there with AI and you start having these sessions and stuff, and it's taking your math to these whole different levels where, I was good at math in high school, but I know I left most of that back in there, but it's all bringing it back again. It's like, oh yes, I remember this. Oh, this is really making a compelling story.
Yes, it's so true. And if you could look at it from an empathetic lens or even a purposeful lens, you can use AI to help you see and uncover things that you might have missed. Pretty impressive what you could do could do with it. Speaking of purpose, we have Stephen and I have actually talked about this. We did a lot of analysis earlier in this show and lots of data that supports this premise that organizations that are purposeful in terms of what they stand for and how they're organized internally also show up different with their audience and how they connect with their audience. And in fact, there's been a study that shows even employees feel that if the job is purposeful, if the company's purposeful, that's a key factor to their satisfaction and they're wanting to stay with a company. Up to 79% of employees have actually said that, according to PwC. So how does purpose influence the way brands build community and communicate their message? I think Stephen spoke to this asked this a little earlier. Maybe we could dig into it a little bit more in terms of do what you say, don't just say what you say. Like, how does that come together?
Yeah, I know I'm not the only one who's worked for an organization in a past life where that didn't happen. And it becomes very clear very quickly that there's no proof in the pudding, like do what I say, not what I do. And that's a recipe for disaster internally and externally, right? But I think, at the core, purpose anchors your messaging. And like you said, people want something to rally around. I think today more than ever, people are starving for that. And they want to know what's behind this brand. Who is behind this brand? Why did they start this brand? What does this all mean? What is that for? How do I relate to this? Is this for me? Do I relate to this and those things as well? And, I think a lot of that comes down to, you have purpose without execution. That's just an idea. Then you have, execution without purpose. That's going to burn you out. And right. Because we've all been in a job where we've lost the purpose, lost the excitement, that drive, and you're just over it. And so you really have to align both for sustainable growth. And I think you've seen, we can look at a few businesses that have done this well and bad, but the one that I always say that's done it so well is Ben & Jerry's. Like, they are just at the core delicious ice cream, but they bring, from the product names to, the partnerships that they do, to the platforms that they stand for, that they're sustainable. Like, there's just so much there. And through every single facet, the proof is in the pudding with them,
And I think Ben & Jerry's is a really interesting example because for years, they were nailing it. And then as they went through this sort of transition of selling, now the new leadership came in and they didn't understand, I don't think, the level of, they were more thinking about the numbers, and their purpose was shareholder value, right? And that's what it was about, was that number. Totally. But it was not the purpose that resonated with everyone in that brand. And you're seeing that with even like Tesla and some other organizations where this higher purpose that originally attracted this core audience to it, suddenly now it's not feeling authentic because this is this disconnect where the leadership doesn't quite understand the purpose, and it's more of this performative thing to get those metrics up, not this real thing. And you're seeing like Ben & Jerry's, the ownership, the previous ownership is like, no, damn it, this is not.
And it's
how dare you?
Even Harley Davidson, remember them? They try to expand and become more inclusive, and their base is like, that's
we don't want
Harley
that.
Was this disconnect. They were coming in with this sort of just to analyze it. This sort of postmodern thinking that the brand base wasn't quite ready for. Some of it wasn't ready for. They just needed to speak to it in the way Harley would. Harley has still got
like Cracker Barrel. I mean,
they've still got a way they can get to that inclusive messaging and stuff, but they would just do it the Harley way. How would Harley do it? Harley's not out trying to hate on people or anything.
They don't care. They want to be different. They don't want to be.
That's the danger of when you have a leader that's convinced that they are tuned in to the mass, and in reality, they may only be tuned in to a small percent who's very loud. and they alienate the rest of their base as a result of that. It's like, tune in.
Yeah.
Listen more,
And just for me, just, over the years studying consciousness and stuff and understanding where these different people are, you see these two different audiences of like either leadership can be, here thinking postmodern way and the audience, the base isn't ready for that, or vice versa. Like, Ben and Jerry's, was leading from that sort of postmodern way. And then the leadership that came in after that was not at all. They were back into more of that old school thinking. And there was this disconnect, and you just you really need to dig in more into the DNA, I think, of a company, to understand what's truly their soul. It's not those quarterly earnings. That's not the purpose that is inspiring everybody to come to your brand, inspiring your employees, and if you're just auditing your business by profit versus auditing it by purpose and people and planet and all those things, this is where you're going to end up in some of that trouble. Yeah. So, one of the questions we love to ask on this show, just to get different perspectives on this, because it's something that we really like to talk about, is the role that love can play in business and what you do. And so for you, whether you want to think about it from how you show up with your business or just business in general, what role should love play in business, do you think?
I think love is everything when it comes to your life, whether you don't work and you are CEO of your home, or you're CEO of an organization, a Fortune 500 organization, or a growing small business, a mom and pop shop. I think love is really it. And when you can bring that to what you do, that is really when real magic, real change, real impact happens. And I think, we talked about, you can have leaders that just want to make a buck, right? But at the end of the day, I think for a lot of people, there's going to be people like that out there that I want to build something. I just want to make millions of dollars. And yeah, great, amazing. But for me personally, it has to mean something. It has to. And I'm very fortunate. I know I come from a place where I was very fortunate to love marketing and to fall in love with marketing and advertising when I was going into college. I always loved to write growing up and read, and I thought I would study English, and then I stumbled onto advertising before I was going to be a freshman at Michigan State, go green, and was like, oh my gosh, you can get paid to write like commercials and jingles, and you work with fun people. Like, that sounds amazing. And I love what I do. And I think that is truly, the reason why I've been so successful and have the opportunities that I have, because I don't know, people tell me I'm an excitable, energetic person, but I think, yes, I am naturally like that. 3 kids be damned. But that I also just really enjoy it. I'm just fascinated by it and love it so much. And I believe in, the idea of small and medium-sized businesses, like how important they are to the fabric of our communities and our society and business as a whole. Like, what a gift to be able to work with them and to help drive their success forward. So for me personally, like, I really do believe that love is at the core of everything that we do and how we function within the personal and the professional space.
Yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, if you want to fall in love with marketing, maybe you've been focusing on the features and benefits and all that stuff so long, and some of those boring, data points and stuff, that you've lost the love for that. Well, what we're talking about, this whole podcast is really, it's building that emotional connection, how you can be authentic, how you can find that purpose. This is how you're going to fall back in love with marketing. If you've fallen out of it out there, if it's like feeling dry to you, this is where the real, I think, the soul of it comes from. If you can really hone in on that, those elements that we talked about today.
I totally agree. And I always like to think about too, real quick, is that even animals market themselves. Like, nature markets itself with beautiful blooms of flowers and fragrances to drive in the bees. And it's like,
with its color. And
yes. It's just a beautiful thing. And so when you think about that, because I know a lot of times marketing, advertising, you're screaming at people, but it's like, I always have to say, like, I think it just shows how wonderfully intelligent and funny and authentic people are. When you see a good commercial and you cry, like, are you kidding me? Like, there's people that make movies every day for millions of dollars that can't reach the level of that human connection in a 30-second commercial or a TikTok, So I just think it's just the coolest thing when you kind of like step back a little bit. And yes, it can be like anything. It can be a racket or get the best of you, or you can get like too much in it. But I think at the core, it's so fun.
I think it's been an interesting evolution too. Initially, probably in the earlier days, people were convinced that influence was about convincing or changing minds. And it worked for a certain degree, but it didn't really work. What actually happened is they were just connecting with people's desires to begin with. And that resonance created interest, right? But it took us time to figure out that's actually what's really happening is you're just trying to find a way to bring connection into something that is already important to other people. And then through that, you create community. So let's give something for our audience to remember. Like if they remember one thing from today, right? For leaders and business owners who want to build stronger community today, like they could do this month. One thing, what is one practical step they should absolutely do?
Yeah, I'll give them something they can do literally right after they stop listening to this fantastic podcast is reach out to 5 people in your network and set up a half hour to meet with them this week with the intention of wanting to connect those 5 people to an additional 5 people in your network from there. Give it because I think a lot of times, whether you're going to you're going to network, I'm going to a networking event, and you can feel like, an event. It's like you go in there with the intent of, I'm going to meet somebody, I'm going to help them out. Like, who am I? Hi, nice to meet you. Like, how can I help you? Who do I know that I can connect this person to? Who in my network have I not talked to in a long time? I wonder what they're up to. I wonder how I can help them. And man, just the power that is just in reaching out to 5 individuals in your network and then wanting to connect them with 2 people, 1 person in your network. You just do not know how magnificently impactful that can be on somebody's business and on their life too.
I love it. Practice being a connector today. All right. If people want to learn about you and your company, where should they go? How do they reach you?
Yes, we would love everybody to reach out to me, Leslie Bailey Youngblood on LinkedIn. I'm very present on LinkedIn. You can also find us at youngbloodmmc.com and listen to our Serious Lady Business podcast, seriousladybussiness.com. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. So loving that. And Table Tag, our tech platform that simplifies communication between marketers and their restaurant clients, is tabletag.io. We are taking names for the wait list and going to start that beta later this summer. So very exciting things in store. Would love to connect with anybody and everybody that reaches out to us.
Leslie, thank you for joining us. I know we could just geek out on the marketing talk for
well, let's keep going, guys.
To our listeners, thank you for connecting with us and asking your questions, and thinking about that topic of connection. It's built through intention, it's consistency, and I think we hit on it several times, authenticity. So consider how, all your messages, your systems, your leadership, how they are all contributing to the relationships you're trying to build. And thank you for joining us on the Bliss Business Podcast, and we will see you next time.